Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
Thank you again for joining me here at the back of the range. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 39. It is a busy week for us here at the back of the range. Lots of episodes to record for you all, and that means lots of editing. So definitely staying busy. I hope you all are having a great week. I can't wait to see who actually wins the FedEx Cup this weekend, but I'm wondering, is anyone else looking past this weekend and just directly to the Ryder Cup? I'm sure we're all going to be watching the Ryder Cup with great interest. I cannot wait to see what the pairings are going to look like. Lots of fascinating possibilities. But let's get some podcast housekeeping stuff out of the way quick so we can get to this week's guest. Really excited about this episode, as I am with all of them. But don't forget, all of the episodes are available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the central hub of the podcast is thebackoftherange.com. Many of you already know we are on Instagram. We're there at the Back of the Range Podcast. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. And if you like the podcast, I cannot stress it enough. Please share it with your friends and leave a review wherever you can. Coming up this weekend, we have the start of the 2018 U.S. Mid-Amateur Championship, which will be held at Charlotte Country Club and Carolina Country Club in North Carolina. So since we're leading into that tournament, I thought it might be a good idea to get a past champion on as a guest this week. This week's guest is Mike McCoy from West Des Moines, Iowa. Mike took some time to chat with us last week right before getting out for a practice round at Pine Valley. Yes, Mike was participating in the Crump Cup, and, why shouldn't he? He's only won the event 4 times, and as I said earlier, he is a United States Mid-Amateur Champion. He won it in 2013, which, of course, got him an invite to play in the 2014 Masters. And if that wasn't enough, he kept things rolling and earned a spot on the 2015 Walker Cup team as one of the most experienced amateurs to ever make the team. Yeah, I'm not allowed to call Mike old. So most experienced amateurs ever to make the Walker Cup team. If you're curious as to who else is on that team, well, Maverick McNeely, Bo Hostler, Scott Harvey, and Bryson DeChambeau. So we got into that. And we also spoke about his recent trip to Scotland with his Iowa buddy, Gene Elliott. We spoke about playing in the Senior British Am and how they both qualified at different sites for the Senior British Open. So if the name Gene Elliott rings a bell, well, not only was he a guest on the Back of the Range earlier this year, but he just won the senior division at the Crump Cup. So let's get started with this week's episode. Mike, I greatly appreciate the time. Welcome to the Back of the Range.
It's good to be with you.
Well, this is great. You're not at home in Iowa right now. You're actually at a tournament site, and pretty big tournament at a pretty important club. Why don't you tell the listeners where you're at right now?
Well, this is Crump Cup week, and we're at Pine Valley Golf Club in New Jersey.
Well, and you can just go online and get a tee time for there anytime you want to, right?
Well, I tell you, you might need to call somebody first that knows their way in here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Pine Valley is one of the most historic and exclusive clubs in the world, and Crump Cup is kind of the celebration of mid-amateur and senior amateur golf, I would guess. You've played in this several times. I think you've won it 4 times. Is that correct?
That's right. I've enjoyed my time here.
What's the most special part of playing in? Before we get into your history and some of the other accomplishments that you've done, especially this year, we could fill up this whole episode with just your 2018. But what's the most special thing about playing the Crump Cup, other than the course? I know the course is Pine Valley; it's historic. But once you get past that, if you can, what's the most special part of playing this tournament?
It's somewhat of a throwback, I think, to maybe a different era. The tournament is really. It's a match play tournament, which is unique in itself. We play very little match play golf these days, and so that's nice because you get the chance to probably play with some guys that you might not have otherwise known.
Sure.
They have the evenings are filled with players' dinners and barbecues, and so there's some relaxed nights, and then there's a pretty formal players dinner night, which is really one of the best nights in amateur golf. And You usually sit next to your opponent for the next morning after the pairings have been made after the qualifying, and there's usually some nice words spoken, a few jokes told, and very special night. And then, of course, if you're lucky enough to be playing on Sunday afternoon, they let the gates open, and the general public gets their opportunity to walk the golf course. So, anywhere from several hundred to several thousand people show up, depending on, the weather and whether the Eagles are in town.
Sure.
And they just trail along behind you, just kind of like they did in the old days, and no gallery ropes. And it's, you could have a few thousand people out watching your match. So pretty neat.
Well, definitely need to get up there to check that out. That Sunday afternoon sounds like pretty much a dream day for any golf fan that gets to see the top amateurs in the country and the world competing. So before we, just to give a little bit of your resume to people listening, I'm working off maybe a little bit of old information here, but obviously 2013 U.S. Mid-Amateur Champion, got you into the Masters in 2014. You've played in numerous U.S. AMs, numerous U.S. Mid-Ams. Iowa Golf Hall of Famer, 5-time Iowa Amateur Champion. Can you tell me the exact number as of now? How many USGA championships have you played in? And let's go ahead and include the U.S. Senior Am this year. Do you have that number?
I think it's 56.
Good God. How the hell did that happen? When did you start?
My first USGA championship was about the 82 public links. And, I played in a couple public links while I was in college. And then I qualified for the 84 U.S. Amateur at Oak Tree. I think Scott Verplank won that year.
Yep.
And then I had a little lull because obviously I started my career, but I'd gone to tour school twice. I really didn't play any pro golf back then. There was, you either earned your card or you went to Asia, and,
right.
And I went to work. So, and I really probably didn't get going much really until my 30s. I kind of established my career, over the next, 5 to 8 years. And then from there, I just started qualifying. I would qualify for an amateur, and I qualify for another amateur, and then qualifying for some mid-amateurs, and anyway, it just kind of
they rack up. They rack up.
They do.
So you mentioned you actually have to balance your career. You're in the insurance industry. You have all of these things that you're trying to do with family and with golf. One of the challenges that a lot of amateurs face is, like you said, trying to find time to practice, trying to find time to devote to the game. They may say, "Oh, I don't have much time. I only have a day. I want to go play that day." Typical Saturday golfers. You're an elite amateur. You're not obviously a 12 handicap, but the struggle is the same. What do you do to maintain your game when you have so many other commitments?
For the most part, I would say I've always had some kind of professional help, a coach or somebody that, I would see, on a fairly frequent basis. So, rather than maybe play a local tournament or, go out and play golf with my buddies, I'd go work with a golf pro on my game. And usually from those sessions, I had a lot of enthusiasm to, continue to try and improve and work on my technique. And so that kept it fresh for me, and I think I've always, been curious and interested. And so, I just, I get a lot of enjoyment out of going out by myself in the evening and hitting some golf balls,
sure,
or chipping and putting. And, maybe I'll play 3 or 4 holes, before dark or something. But I don't, I don't play a lot of social golf when I'm back in Des Moines. Most of my golf is on the road when I'm playing the tournaments. But I do try to get out and hit balls. And I do, try to keep my game sharp by, working on things.
Of course. So you mentioned you played in college. You played at Wichita State. The college experience back then compared to what it is now, tell me a little bit about your team. Tell me, maybe some fond memories of playing in college. And you said you you didn't go that you went to tour school a couple times, but what did college golf mean to you?
Well, I think that's when I really started to learn to play the game. In Wichita, we were lucky we had a university course right on campus, and it wasn't the hardest golf course, but it was right there. And I think what made it such an enjoyable experience is there was just a lot of good players, not just on the team, but people, alumni, and some local pros. And I think at 1:00 every day there was a golf game, and we all threw up the golf balls, and people paired off, and away we went, and just played a lot of golf. It didn't matter if it was windy or cold. The game went on, and so I learned to play in some tough conditions because the wind can really blow down in Wichita.
Of course.
And then as far as college golf, obviously still friends with most of those guys. And, back then, budgets weren't what they are today. And, we would load up in a van, we'd pull a U-Haul full of our clubs and suitcases, and, we'd drive as far as Monterrey, Mexico from Wichita to play a college tournament. Or we'd take off and we'd go from Wichita to Colorado Springs to, Arizona, and then back to El Paso, and back to Wichita. I mean, there were times we were gone a couple weeks at a time just because we were driving.
Sure, give me a good Mexico story. I mean, I can't imagine what that must have been like. What is this?
Well, it would have been the late '70s. Oh my goodness! Well, back then things were a lot looser.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm like, I don't want a story about Mexico now. You going with your friends to Cabo or something. I want a story about Mexico and college in the '70s. That's what I want.
Well, yeah, back then, we were still. I mean, Wichita still was, a small, I would say very, very up and coming school. We weren't by any means one of America's powerhouses, but
sure.
There was always a great tournament in Monterey, and we were always invited. And but you had teams like Texas and BYU and Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma, and all these great players. Many of them who went on to have great careers on the tour. And I can remember we would somehow find ourselves down in the hotel bar, and guys would be drinking margaritas and smoking cigarettes. And,
nice.
You just wouldn't see that today, and it didn't seem to. It was one of those things where you really got to know some guys from around the country you wouldn't have met, and we just had a great time.
You left Wichita State. You did Q school you tried Q school a couple times, like you said, and then went the amateur route. I know you playing all these amateur tournaments, you're seeing a lot of mid-ams. You're probably seeing a lot of, through the many tournaments you've played, and you're seeing a lot of up-and-coming college players that are now on the PGA Tour. What are some of the things that you saw during your Q school that maybe is completely different than what these kids are trying to do now, whether it's, playing challenge tours, whether it's the Mackenzie? What was so different about the route you had to take then compared to the route the kids are doing now?
Well, I think there just weren't as many options. It was a situation where you really had to get your tour card, or you had to be prepared to go to Asia.
Right.
There was no middle ground. They didn't have and a lot of my friends did go to Asia, and that was something I just elected to get into business. I had that instinct that I wanted to do something else, and I loved golf, but it just wasn't going to work out for me. And
sure.
But I saw my son come up, and he tried, and he was able to play in Canada, and there was a little more structure around his opportunity. It didn't work out for him, but the web was certainly a path that he tried to take, and it was very, very hyper competitive, as you know, and it's definitely more organized, more structured. it's no easier.
Oh, of course not. And you're speaking about your son that played all 4 years at Iowa State University. So, yeah, and he's done
Right.
a lot of caddying for you. And I'm going to ask you about your experience with him caddying for you in the Masters in 2014. I have a dumb question for you, which probably won't be the last one, but it'll definitely be the first one. You've accomplished all these things, and you're playing on whether it's the the U.S. Senior Open or just playing with guys that have played professionally in the past. When you're playing these practice rounds with professionals that are on the Champions Tour, do they look at your life and your accomplishments and are a little bit envious of you, or is it vice versa? Or what are the kind of the relationships that you've formed in that realm?
Well, I would say they're all very nice guys,
Sure.
and I'm certainly no threat to any of them because I'm playing just a couple of times as an amateur a year with them, and I've been pleasantly surprised at how nice they have been to me and the other guys that are there as well. I mean,
Sure.
there's usually a handful of amateurs, and so it's fun for us to go out and play with them, and there's no question. You start the week thinking, I can play with these guys, and usually by it doesn't take long. By Thursday or Friday, you realize why they've made $25 million or $50 million. They're in the Hall of Fame. Why they're out there, and as I say, you couldn't beat them then, and you certainly can't beat them now. So, but it is fun, and on a given day, you can certainly have a good day, and feel like, well, this I might have been able to hold my own.
Sure. When was the last time that you were nervous playing with someone or against someone in a tournament? Not nervous about the actual event or the outcome of the match, but when's the last time you were paired with someone, whether it's a practice round or it's against someone, where you're like, oh man, I got to step it up a little bit.
Well, I played with VJ in the U.S. Senior Open in a practice round.
VJ Singh, yeah.
Right. And, we were standing on the first tee, and he was sort of distracted by something. He was kind of keeping his eye on a soccer game, so we didn't even really have a chance to meet much before they called us to the tee. And, I was playing with a couple of other amateurs, and we got up and hit good tee shots right down the middle, and VJ walked up there and still semi-half distracted by things, and he just, he launched this tee shot, and it was just like something, you obviously, don't see that very often, and
sure.
It went about 30 yards higher and about 40 yards further than all of our shots. And wow, this is going to be fun. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much intimidating as maybe just I was in a little bit of awe
right.
at how marvelous he played.
Sure. Well, I guess you can say that one of the big highlights of your amateur career was winning the U.S. Mid-Am in 2013. And as just about everyone knows, the U.S. Mid-Am winner gets an invite to play in the Masters the following year. So that would be 2014. That was Bubba's second win. Just to kind of refresh everyone's memory, that's when he held off Jordan Spieth. I know that, I've asked this question to other people. I asked it to Austin Cook earlier this year when he was talking about his first Masters experience. We all know the typical first-time reactions about the greens and the elevation. But for an average fan that just hasn't been there, or maybe they have, what's one thing about the Masters experience for you that surprised you?
I tell you, the whole week is choreographed, to the moment. It is, so well run. You wonder how this tournament, which is in theory basically put on by a club with a bunch of volunteers and some help from some rules officials, organizes this incredible global undertaking,
right.
and everything from, from really when you arrive to the property to, when you depart, it is so carefully crafted, and, it's done so well. I mean, you really don't have to wander around wondering what to do and how to do it. It's sort of all taken care of for you. And everybody, whether you're 20-year tour veteran or first-time amateur, everybody is so excited to be there, and everybody. I remember on the putting green on the second day, and Ken Duke says, "Boy, I'm so happy to be here. We are going to have a lot of fun." Here's a veteran, who's been out on tour, really his whole career, and he was just as excited as I was to get to the first tee and play. So, those were the kind of things that I remember, and of course having my son there was really special because he and I had played a lot of golf together, and it was a chance for us to spend a pretty special week.
Of course. And, not to throw your son under the bus, but you were both rookies there at the Masters, and, I'm sure you made rookie mistakes on the course. You ended up missing the cut, which, unfortunately seems to be commonplace for the Mid-Am champions. I think only Stuart Hagestad's the only Mid-Am that made the cut there.
That's right.
So give me a rookie mistake that your son made on the bag that week.
Well, he no question, he was feeling more stressed than I was.
I would imagine. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
And, I hit a couple shots in some bunkers around the green.
Sure.
And they have a very, strict, protocol of how they want those bunkers, raked. And
sure.
So he's a pretty, he's pretty dependable, and he's, facetious about doing things the right way. So he never quite caught up to me on those holes when I'd look back, and he'd be back there smoothing things out, and I was kind of on my own, getting the ball clean and getting a read because he wasn't going to leave that bunker anything but perfect. So those were fun memories, and I remember we were walking up the 36th hole, and I was playing with Larry Mize, and who's absolutely the finest guy you could ever be paired with. I mean, he's just he's absolutely a perfect gentleman, and of course watching him play, here he is in his 50s playing Augusta. Obviously you remember his win, and
sure,
he just was magical around those greens, and here he was. We were walking up 18, and he's kind of right on the line to make the cut, and as we're walking up the fairway, Nate looks at him and said, "Boy, this has sure been a lot of fun, Mr. Mize." And he goes, "Yes, it has, Nate." And so, in my mind, I know he's grinding, to make 4 on 18 and make the cut, and but he was just, I knew he was genuinely. He was just had enjoyed the experience so much. And anyway, Larry did go on to make par, made the cut, so I was pretty excited for him, and it was nice to watch him be able to do that. And here he was in his early to mid 50s, so
sure,
pretty impressive.
And you you played your first 2 rounds with as you said, Larry Mize, the '87 champ. I think everyone remembers the chip in the playoff on 11. You played with Brandon Grace. You had practice rounds with, I think, was it Justin Rose, and then your Iowa buddy Zach Johnson.
That's right. That's right.
So tell me a little bit about playing a practice round and then playing a competitive round with Masters champions. I'm sure you're getting more from them than you are from no disrespect, but you're getting more from them, I would imagine, than Brandon Grace and Justin Rose. Are they just sharing their knowledge of the club? I mean, it's almost like they're ambassadors of the club because they're just so proud to be there as Masters champions. No
question. I mean, obviously everybody recognizes them, and and they try to be helpful. But you've played it. I've played it 5 or 6 times leading up to that, and so you kind of have a feel for it, and you really don't, honestly. You think you do, but you don't. And
right.
It's amazing. The golf course changes so much from Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday to Thursday. I mean, Thursday, all of a sudden, you kind of have the same little chip shot you had, but all of a sudden, it lands a little firmer, it runs a little further out. Instead of a 3-footer, you got a 7 or 8-footer, and you think, wow, how did that happen? Chipping it uphill.
Yeah.
But so things change. But No, they were terrific, and they were there, and the closer we got to the tournament, you could definitely see them dialing it in a little more, and people were getting a little more serious about their approach, and by Wednesday, it was everybody kind of were getting their game faces on.
Yeah. So you play one of the perks of winning the U.S. Mid-Am, you get to play in the Masters in 2014, like we just spoke about. But the other thing that happened is when you won that U.S. Mid-Am, that really put you on a track to potentially play on the Walker Cup team in 2015, which you did. You were one of the let's not say oldest. You were one of the most seasoned amateurs in history to play on the Walker Cup team. I hope that sounds good. So I guess I'm just curious, it's a long process to get to that 2015 team. There's just all these college players, and mid-ams that, like the Scott Harveys and all of the other, the Nathan Smiths. Did you have a conscious process to put yourself in the best position to make that team in 2015 after you won the U.S. Mid in 13?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was, it was clearly one of my goals. I was very fortunate, fairly early on in my amateur career by playing, some of the USGA events. As time went on, I got acquainted with guys like John Harris from Minnesota, who went on to win an amateur and playing on a number of Walker Cup teams, Buddy Marucci, Jay Siegel, these iconic career amateurs. And so, I paid a lot of attention to that. And obviously I saw how important it was to them and, how hard they fought to make those teams. And, and it really became something I wanted to do. You could tell there was that, there was a special bond between those guys who had played on teams together. And I was, doing everything I could to get good enough to play. And I was playing all the tournaments. I really played active schedules, and I really played hard all through my 40s, just trying to catch that lightning in the bottle and win a USGA event or, just have that magical run somewhere that, is really what you need. And, it's hard to, it's hard to win. And of course, when that happened, the thought of slowing down then, it was just now it was time to hit the gas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I'd been waiting for this. And, obviously I wish it would have happened when I was 40 instead of, 51. But that's when it happened. And so I just, I really doubled down and, just really committed myself over that next couple of years to playing, the best golf I could possibly play. And I wanted to play as often as I could to, kind of give myself the opportunity and let the selection committee see how important it was to me that, I wasn't afraid to have a bad tournament. If I was going to a site that, maybe didn't suit me as well, I still wanted to go there. I wanted to compete.
Sure.
And so I played a lot of, competitive golf over a couple-year period, and I really played some great mid-am golf during that time as well. I won the Crump Cup, I won the Coleman, I had won, the Lupton. So, I was on a good roll. I mean, I felt like, from the mid-am standpoint, I was definitely, at that time, certainly, almost at the top of the list. Not every week, but I was competitive every week. And so, and I was just, I was very fortunate to make the team and, certainly be, why we didn't win, it was certainly one of those great experiences that, I guess I had no regrets. I spent so many years trying to achieve that. It really was everything, you hoped it would be. And it comes and goes very quickly, but, certainly those memories are still with me.
Yeah. And, the Walker Cup in 2015 was at Lytham and St. Anne's. So you have these young hotshots on this team. You got Maverick McNeely, you got Beau Hossler, and then Bryson DeChambeau, which is on everyone's mind right now, just with the incredible run he's made to get himself onto the Ryder Cup team. Were there things that you saw out of those three guys, or maybe some of the things you saw of the younger players that really jumped out at you in comparison, maybe with the other guys on the team or the other guys on the GB&I team? Just curious if one of those players really jumped out at you back then, 3 years ago, that said, "Wow, this guy's going to be something."
Really, honestly, at the time, you thought all of them were going to,
Sure.
be superstars, and they're all, and virtually all of them are doing great. I mean, Scott Harvey went on to win another Mid-Am, and you look at what Bryson's done. It's just, remarkable, and obviously the thing, I remember is how strong they all were, and how poised they were. Their golf games were, they were certainly as good as any golf professional you'll ever see. And of course, it's evidenced by the fact they all went out there and gained status. And, in the case of Bo and Bryson and Denny McCarthy, I mean, they went right out on the tour, and, there was no stop in between. I mean, they were just played their way right out there. And, they're just, very, very, you just didn't see any weaknesses in any of their games.
Sure.
And I think the thing that stood out to me is really how intelligent those kids were. I mean, they were all really smart kids, and I was very impressed by, they were, school had started, we were playing in the fall, and, here we are running around the world. I mean, we were, traveling and playing practice rounds, and these kids had their book bags opened, and they just they were taking care of their school and helping each other out. It was fun to see. I mean, Maverick was helping somebody with their Spanish, and Bryson was helping somebody with their math. And I'm thinking, wow, Scott Harvey and I were sitting back there saying,
It's a pretty elite study hall you got going on there.
Now, my goodness.
And it actually leads me to this other question. Normally it's on teams like this, or in any situation, the veterans would kind of haze the rookies. Right. But you were the old guy on this team full of a bunch of collegiate stars. I mean, you mentioned Scott Harvey, Mid-Am champ, but for the most part, you got a bunch of kids. Did they kind of haze the old guys during this week? I mean, you got to give me one story about them, like showing you something on their phone, and you're like, I don't know what that is. So,
well, we had a practice session in Latrobe, and that was one of the, the great. We got to spend 2 or 3 days up there, and of course, Mr. Palmer was our host, and we got to have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and we did our uniform fittings there. And
sure,
we had the chance to play some golf, and he came out and watched us. But one of the things they did, and this was a pretty neat idea by the captain, Spider Miller. He had a nickname. Obviously, Spider wasn't his given name, and so he said, "I've had a nickname my whole life, and I'm going to give every one of you a nickname." And so it kind of worked its way around, and I think it turned out I became Uncle Mike to all these guys. So to this day, I'll get a text from the guys, "Hey, Uncle Mike, how you doing?" And it's kind of it's endearing, and in Scott Harvey's case, he became known as the sweet swinger Scott Harvey. So anyway, when I see him, I say, "Hey, Swinger, how you doing?" And so,
nice.
that was something fun that came out of it. And we still use our nicknames that we gave each other on that trip.
All right, I got to ask, what's Bryson's nickname?
This was Bill Nye.
Oh my God, that's perfect. Oh, that's so perfect.
Yeah. I will tell you a funny story about Bryson.
That's what we do here. Go ahead.
Well, we were at Litham's, and they had a kind of an opening cocktail party where the club was all the members of the club. It was kind of a private event just for the members, and they gave us all a pair of cufflinks and introduced us to their membership. And
sure.
And Captain Miller said, "Why don't we just, take 30 minutes and let's stick around and shake some hands and meet some of the people, and then we'll get out of here and get back to the hotel." So after they, completed the, sort of the formal part of the evening, we we stayed and visited, as did the GD&I team. And I had met this, distinguished guy who was, sitting towards the front. And we were visiting, and he was, he was a part of the RNA, and he was there kind of as their guest. And I asked him what his profession was, and he said he was a physics teacher at St. Andrews University.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, we've got a physics student on our team. I said, so I went over and grabbed Bryce and I said, come on over here. You got to meet this guy. And so, I introduced him, and Bryson started kind of, he was, asking him what was he studying, what was he focused on, what was he working on, and he described it in some, scientific manner, and a lot of certainly jargon I wasn't used to, and,
sure,
and it had something to do with a laser technology, and Bryson looks at me,
and he's not talking about Bushnell. He's not talking about Bushnell laser.
No,
that's the only laser I really know. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so, and I know at that point, Bryson understands pretty much everything he's saying. And he looks at me, and I know he feels bad for me because I don't have the first idea what they're talking about. And he looks at me and he says, this pulsating technology he's talking about, it's like peeking through a pinhole through a wall, like trying to look through a wall through a very teeny pinhole. And the professor looked at him and says, that's an excellent analogy. And I said, okay, this guy's for real. Anyway, there was no BS there. I think he sort of at that moment, I knew he knew what he was talking about.
Nice.
So
that's a great story. No, that's awesome. Well, we can go for a long, long time, but I want to get to a couple other things before I let you go. This year, you're big in Iowa golf. You're a 2011 Hall of Fame inductee. Just 1 year before, Gene Elliott, who is a previous guest on the podcast, he got in 2012. You guys are really good friends. I know you've won. We're not going to go through all the 4 balls you two guys have won because, I'll run out of room on the hard drive here to record all that. But you guys have done a lot in Iowa. This year you embarked on a trip to Scotland, brought the wives and did a you both went over to attempt to qualify for the Senior Open Championship, which was held in St. Andrews. Kind of tell me, how did that idea come to pass? How did you guys put that whole thing together?
Well, it was St. Andrews, and so that in itself is something you'd like to do someday. And it happened to be the year I turned 55, and I said, why don't we go do it? And then from there, it just so happened that the British Senior Amateur backs right up to that, and so. It was a chance to play 2 tournaments. And, I said, I guess if we don't make it, if we don't qualify for the Open, we can, there's a lot of great golf there. We'll go play some golf for a couple of days and
sure.
then, work our way to Wales. But, as it happened, we both, we got over there a couple of days early, and we were assigned to different qualifying sites. And so we really didn't see much of each other. But on the Monday of the Open week, we qualified, and we both had good days, and but that being the case, we both played early enough in the day. We kind of had to sit there and sweat it out all day.
Yeah.
We were texting back and forth, and just how you doing, how's it looking, and so anyway, it was a big thrill for both of us to get in, and I guess it made it the perfect trip. So. We had a wonderful time, really, both weeks.
That's great. Yeah, you both got into the Senior Open, both played the British British Senior Am. Some of the things, so there's tons of stuff to do. What are some of what's the most fun you had in St. Andrews, not on a golf course?
We had a very, very nice lunch at the RNA, and that was a lot of fun. And so we did get to spend some time inside the RNA. That was a lot of fun. We actually stayed in a very nice bed and breakfast with a couple that they do golf excursions, and so they were. And he's a good player in his own right. And so, we enjoyed we enjoyed being with them. They took us to some local restaurants. We played their local course, and just had a very relaxing, just a very relaxing trip.
Sure.
It was terrific, and of course, just honestly, when I wasn't playing, I went out and watched some of these guys play. I went out and followed Freddie Couples play 4 or 5 holes, and it's fun for me to watch these guys, in the same setting I was trying to play, and see how they did it.
Of course.
So those were the things we had a lot of fun. We did have a lot of fun. Sure.
Well, before I let you go, we just have a little segment here at the back of the range called the Quick Bucket, just kind of really quick questions, and then we'll get you out of here. So what's the first set of golf clubs that you ever owned?
Wilson Staff.
Last time you purchased gloves or balls or tees?
Boy, it's been a while.
Okay. What's the last time you received like a golf shirt or some golf equipment as like a birthday present or a Christmas present? When's the last time you got something golf related as a present?
Oh, that happens about every Christmas. Somebody gives me, a golf shirt or
because that's what you need, right?
Polo. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So for amateurs that are playing, sometimes when you play in these amateur tournaments, you get little pro shop credits for finishing, and obviously we can't take cash. What's your go-to move when you get a pro shop credit? What are your tips and tricks for amateurs? How do you spend that?
My wife likes to play golf, so I kind of go to the ladies department.
Brilliant.
She's got more ladies gear from some of the great clubs all over the world, and she's definitely logoed out when she goes plays.
You are a brilliant man, aren't you? Wow, that's next level move right there. Let's see. One thing we'll finish up with is, I mentioned earlier, we had Gene Elliott on the podcast earlier this year. He did give us a good Mike McCoy story. So I'm going to let you return the favor. Give me a good Gene Elliott story.
Oh my goodness. Well, Gene's absolutely, one of the first of all, he's just one of the best guys you could ever meet. He's been a true friend through a lot of through many decades. We've known each other since high school, and we've traveled all over the world. We've played golf, we've been partners, but when you spend that much time, you obviously things happen. And,
sure.
And you really get to know and know somebody, and he's been a traveling salesman. He worked for his family's business, and Gene would put 100,000 miles on the car, driving around, calling on people. And so, as technology in these cars changed, you get GPS, and it drives you right to where you're going to go. But Gene's always been a big map guy. He's got maps laid out all over his car, and he's got he's driving brand new car with modern navigation system. He doesn't even know how to turn it on. So he's got these atlases and maps. And anyway, same thing happened when we were in Scotland. We went over to play in a British amateur, and of course we had some time before the tournament, so we were driving around playing some of the other courses, and of course it's the weather can be awful, and Gene's a good driver, and he does not let me drive when we're traveling.
Okay.
I'm a little distracted, but anyway, Gene hit the curb, in one of the roundabouts, which happens frequently over there. I've done it a number of times myself, and we blew a tire, and it's pouring rain, and we're in the middle of nowhere, absolutely middle of nowhere. And so we get out, we put on our rain gear. I get the umbrella, and I'm holding the umbrella above Gene. He's trying to change the tire because he owns a garage operation.
Sure.
I figure he knows I don't know how to change the tire. I figured this guy. So the lug nuts were on there so tight we couldn't get them off, and I said, well, I'll head into town. So I take off walking, and I get probably a quarter mile down the road, and he somehow had popped one of the lug nuts off, and those are the kind of it was it was a classic picture of Gene down there working, and I was holding the umbrella over his head.
Like you're okay. So so we know who's Thelma and we know who is Louise, is what you're saying.
That's exactly right.
That's
exactly right. But he's the best. He's a great player, but he's a better person. And we've just had, we've had more experiences. In fact, we were. Last night we were sitting at the Phillies game. We'd flown in last night.
Sure.
Went to a baseball game with a couple friends, and we just said, "Boy, we're awful lucky. Here we are, getting to do this one more time." And so, we do count our blessings.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, really, really do appreciate the time, especially since you're about ready to head out for a practice round at the Crump Cup at Pine Valley. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us here at the back of the range. Good luck the rest of this year. I know we didn't hit on your senior amateur experience this year in Oregon, but congrats as a semifinalist. Congrats on all your success this year and the years to come. And hopefully we do it again sometime soon.
Well, thank you. It was fun being with you.
And there you have it. Another great episode here at the back of the range. Special thanks to Mike McCoy for joining us this week. We're going to do it again next week. We'll see you right here at the back of the range.